episode. In this week's episode, a beginner's look at T-Splines for Rhino 5. The Autodesk T-Splines Plug-in for Rhino is specifically designed to enhance model development in Rhino 5 by introducing subdivision surface modeling and improving its capabilities for organic modeling. Presenting this webinar is Jim Girard, the principal of Origin Design, a full-service industrial design firm located in Boise, Idaho. Jim has been an early user of both Rhino and T-Splines and has leveraged the strengths of these programs on a variety of client projects. Before we get going, here's an overview of what we do at Novedge. Novedge is one of the largest online design software stores. We offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's need. Put us to the test and come visit our webpage at novedge.com. While you're there, check out the Novedge blog, a great resource to keep up with the latest software updates and where you can enjoy inspiring interviews of today's innovators. And for daily news and promos, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Join our network and you won't miss another special or another Novedge webinar ever again. Coming up next in 2 weeks, actually, RealFlow 2014, the Enhanced UI. This webinar will walk you through RealFlow 2014 Floating License Improved UI, which has been designed to make users' lives easier. To find out how, you will just have to register and join our webinar on July 9th. Last but not least, today's presentation is free and is being recorded live. If you want to rewatch this or any webinar episode, you can find it on our YouTube and Vimeo channel. Just search for Novedge. And now, without further ado, I would like to make Jim the presenter and give him the stage. So Jim, you're going to have to share your screen now and dazzle us with T-Splines. Here you are. Okay. Well, good luck, and we'll talk to you in around 45 minutes.
Thanks, Barbara. I appreciate it. I want to thank you in advance for bearing with me. I have enough trouble walking and chewing gum, so I hope I'll be able to present and explain as I'm modeling in 3D. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm using the latest version of Rhino, which is Rhino 5, and also the latest version of T-Splines for Rhino 5. And so without further ado, what I'd like to do is model a pair of motocross goggles. And in Rhino, there is a tool called Picture Frame. And in Picture Frame, you can bring, show the wrong one, you can bring in any image from the web. And in this case, I'm going to be presenting an image I got off the web by Oakley. And I liked it because it had sort of like an exoskeleton look to it, and it seemed to be perfect for a demo for T-Splines. It has some really neat organic forms, and how they intertwine can be a beautiful organic expression of the strengths of T-Splines. In this form, though, it's very difficult to see your construction lines as you build, so what I did is I created a low let's see, let me turn off the original. Okay, there. A low or a desaturated version of the image. Now, one of the new tools in Rhino is the ability to, I want to make sure I'm unlock that, and is to make it transparent. So you go over to your Properties palette, go to Materials, and you're in Object. In there you can go to your Transparency, and then with your center wheel you can change the transparency of the, basically like a light table. So you can see through it, and yet you can still see the lines, so you can trace your construction lines for your model from that. Now, I know many people who are using Rhino know this, but for those who are new to Rhino as well, I wanted to review that. So then with the trace image, I'll lock it, and now it's not in my way. So again, I don't have cross sections of this, and so a lot of this was guesswork, but for the purposes of this demonstration, that will be fine. And so to start, I'll pick a color that contrasts with that background, and I'll go over to my control point curve, And I'll just quickly ghost in sort of the mask from the front. And then many of you Rhino users know about record history, and then type in the command symmetry, and it asks to select the curve and then the center. And now as you begin to edit the points on this curve to get it exactly where you want it, it will update and maintain that symmetry. Now this is where I like to use T-Splines. I'll come in and I'll pick the T-Splines. Now I have a pop-up menu that I use a lot, and many of the buttons over here, which are T-Splines to the right of my screen, are on that pop-up for, as many of you know, for speed of working. And since I'm in T-Splines now, I can grab that, and instead of using the standard manipulator, or what they call gumball in Rhino, I use the manipulator in T-Splines. I tend to like that, so I can again move these around, and I got pretty close to where I want it for the first line. And when I'm done, I can exit out, and then I type in the command match, and it'll join them and average the curves, and now I have my first curve made. And then what I'd like to do is I just do a copy paste of that, and then I scale it. And again, I come over and get my T-Splines command, invoke T-Splines, and use the manipulator, which is the scale. Now, let me point out, in the upper right-hand corner, for you that have not used T-Splines, is what they call their heads-up display. And Matt will say, Jim, can you not use the hotkeys? And I hope he doesn't. But in here allows me to, the manipulator, I can scale, hidden, I can translate, rotate, very similar to the gumball in Rhino. So in this case, I want to scale the line work that I copied and pasted. And the reason I do this is I want to maintain the same number of points. I'm very cautious and careful about how I maintain the points, because when you create your surfaces, then they all flow together. So sort of groundwork and planning does go a long way in both Rhino and T-Splines, as many of you know. So as I come over onto the second one I made, I can turn on its points, and then again, using T-Splines, I can just pull them up to where I want them. And so it's a wonderful tool. And again, this is for demonstration purposes. But if you have your own drawings or underlays, you can be as close and as tight as you want to be. But for the time that we have to do the demo, I'm going to sort of breeze through that. Now, one of the interesting things that I like is I can come over here and turn on the points, and I can begin shaping what I want to do. And so I will grab these three and these three, and these two and these two, and then going into my T-Splines manipulator, pull them out. And then grab that one. Now in T-Splines, you can set where your manipulator goes by hitting the E key, or T key, and then moving over to that point, and then the E key, which is rotate for the manipulator, I can start developing my nose piece where I want it. So again, I can pull this bottom line one out, go to my translate, pull it further out, and start shaping what I want to do for my nose piece on my mask. Then I will copy these, but before I copy and paste, and I have a button written in here for that, then I move my C-plane back a bit, and again, you can have these dimensions accurate. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes, and I project those curves, but I don't, and I delete them. And now you can see where I have my back wall curves, and this will make sense in a little bit. So I want to now develop the outer exoskeleton. So I'll hide these for a second and do the same operation. As a matter of fact, I don't think I will do that. What I will do is I think I have traced all those shapes in already. So let me get rid of these that I made. For time and brevity, I've already made those shapes. So everyone knows how I did that, and I shaped them all. And again, you try as best you can to keep the point count as low as possible. For the same reason you do in Rhino, you want to do what we call lean modeling. So I'll go to my right C-plane, and I'll make a temporary plane through that. And then I'll trim these curves to that plane. And you'll see the method or reason for this in a second. Now I have all the endpoints. I know they're on the center. And I will use the polyline tool. And you don't have to use this, but again, for clarity, I will. And I will snap to the ends of these. So first of all, I'll do the red lines, which are the mask. And I'll hide these right now. And then I'll take these and explode them. And now I'll explain why I did this. T-splines will not recognize split surfaces from Rhino. In other words, they're trimmed surfaces. It will only see the underlying surface. And so when I build these, I build them using two rail sweeps or network curves or lofting, because a surface that's lofted or swept via one rail or two rails or a network curve will be read in its entirety into T-splines. And to demonstrate that, let me go ahead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some simple two-rail sweeps. I'm going to sweep this rail and this rail with that terminator and that terminator. And now we have the outer surface. Again, that with that terminator and that terminator. And then that surface edge with that terminator and that terminator. And again, I want to thank you for your patience as trying to talk and to model at the same time is not my forte. So I get rid of all my construction lines because they do get in the way. And you could hide them if you know you want to use them later. In this case, I tossed them. Now, when I model, I don't like to show the isocurves because sometimes they get in the way, but if I go over to my properties palette, I can turn them on. And now you see all the detail that underlies these surfaces that were created using a two-rail sweep. So at this point, I select them all, and I go into what's called Rebuild Surface. And if I zoom in green is the V, and in the red axis is the U. And so I'm going to make the V axis 8 and then 18 for the U, and I say OK. And you may want to play around a little bit with that, but now you can see that in each surface, the isocurves line up quite nicely. At this point, I convert these now to T-splines. So I select the T-spline command, I grab them, and I convert them. And now when I'm in T-splines, and I select a surface, you'll see it's a T-spline 1 surface. Now here's where this makes sense. If I go right to left and I grab the two T-spline, I have to invoke, I want to grab the edges here in the heads-up display. If I grab the two edges, and now I say loop, and then in my T-spline to say weld edges. Now I've got a nice tight edge that I've welded. Again, loop weld. And you want to zoom in so that you don't grab other edges. And if you want to know, you look up in your heads-up display. You can see I have 2 T-spline edges. I loop them. It'll tell how many I have, and then I weld them. And again, loop weld. And now I've created my mask. Now I have a lot more detail than I need. At this point, I might want to add some tightness to it, but right now I want to eliminate a lot of edges that are no longer necessary. So I go loop, delete. Grab those, loop and delete. And I'm simplifying my model as I go along. I think one of the major issues I had to deal with when I first started with T-splines was dealing with so many edges. And when I realized that, they were there to I could eliminate as many as I needed to simplify my model and get what we call lean modeling. And so that's a real tight, fully integrated T-spline surface. If I select this and pull it, it's going to move the entire object. Now, one of the other issues about T-splines, if you'll notice, we have these things called tangencies. And there seems to be some strangeness right here where that tangency is off. And that is because when I welded this line together, this one kept its tangency with that point, and the rest of them aren't. And it took me a long while to figure this out, but if I select all my points and I hit this key, which is, and I'll sort of highlight it, it's called crease edges. If you hit the remove creases, it resets the tangencies to the normal, to the points. Am I correct there, Matt, in saying that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the next thing I want to do is loop these edges. And here's another wonderful thing about T-splines. It allows you to give command back to the Rhino by disabling your hotkeys temporarily by hitting your backslash. And you'll see an X through that up there. And now I can type in a Rhino command and say set point. At this point, what I'm trying to do is to ensure before I add symmetry to this model that everything falls on the center line. And in this case, if we go down to our vectors in the corner right here, you'll see that we're on the x-axis. So I'll turn off the y and z and say OK. And then location for the point, I say 0. And now, when I want to introduce symmetry to this model, all I have to do is go to the symmetry command and pick this model, add it axially. And I will turn on my points in my object snap palette to make sure it picks the points. And once it does, you'll get a nice green line down the center showing that now you have a perfect part that is symmetrical and ready for more manipulation with T-splines. Now, bear with me. I think so now that you know how I made it, I don't have to do the blue part again. I'll delete that, and then I'll go to, I think I have final shapes. So now you can see what I showed you was the same process I used on the outer part. But these two parts have to be joined. And many of you will say, well, geez, we could do this in Rhino. And that's true. You could have built this all in Rhino. However, you'll see as the flexibility and the and also the different way of working in T-splines, you'll be able to develop several concepts by just moving what I call virtual digital clay. So what I'm going to do right now is get rid of the symmetry. I did that just to show you how to set the symmetry. And how I do that is I turn off symmetry, or symmetry off, and I pick that and that. And then in my invoke T-splines, and then pick surfaces, grab those and delete them. And now I only have these halves. And one of the things that it took me a while to get used to is, as I've modeled in solid programs like Solid Designer from Hewlett-Packard or Rhino, once you've modeled something, it's sort of there. But that's not the case with T-Splines, in that they have what's called the box mode, and I just come over and say pick some faces, say loop them, and move them out of the way so that I can get into where I want to work. And I'll pick that face and say this face and this face and delete it. And now what I'm going to do is called a bridge. And I pick my edges, and I pick one, and holding the shift key, I multiple select. And if you look up in the heads-up display, I have 4 edges. And now I just have to pick 4 corresponding edges. So I pick this edge, this edge, this edge, and this edge. Sorry about that. Best laid plans. So then I'll bridge that, and I'll give it 4 segments. And now I've bridged that surface. And if I hit my tab key, I can go now and you can see what a beautiful bridge that is. But I like to clean up my model as I go, so I'll share that with you how that's done. So I go back to my box mode, and I say, now I've got overkill. I don't need these and these. Again, I like to eliminate detail that I don't need. And now I'll go to my right C-plane in Rhino. And then I'll pick 2 points. I'll pick that point and that point. And then I take the edges and select them all. And then I use T and show where I want my manipulator. And with the R hotkey, I go into the scale command. And now you'll watch how I take that edge and I just clean it straight up. I just pull it right where I want, a nice straight edge. And then I do that same process here. I'll just put 2 points and that point there, and pick all the edges in between. And I find that for me, when I work in T-Splines, specifically, if I can keep an orderly model and really understand what all the edges are doing, it's a much cleaner and higher fidelity model than I've ever had. So then I go back and I pick the point where I want my manipulator, and again, pull those points into line. Now then, when I hit tab, you'll see that I have a very clean bridge. Now, one of the other things that I've learned and I want to share with you is that in their infinite wisdom, the T-Splines gang provided a button called Make Uniform. And the best I can describe this button is that it relaxes your model. So if I say Make Uniform, now all the surfaces and the bridges, and let me get rid of the trace image here because it seems to be in the way there. So now we've bridged that one area for our exoskeleton look. And remember, when I move this out, I can go back to my box form, go to D, which is a hotkey for faces, and then they have another hotkey, P, which allows me to paint, basically paint the faces, so I don't have to pick them individually. Then I go to T, which allows me to set my manipulator where I want it, and now I can pull that right back to where it was. And now, what I love is I can say, well, that really is a stinky transition. Well, I just go to S, loop it, and delete it. And now, because of its G3 surfacing qualities, you get these really beautiful transitions. That's a little close. So again, I come over here, pick the face manipulator, face command, loop it, go to my transform manipulator, and just pull it out. Because essentially this is virtual clay. Again, I will now go and do the same thing where I want to remove or bridge this top surface. Let's see, maybe that's not, I'll pick that. Pick these top 9 surfaces. Now you can bridge the surfaces, but I run into problems sometimes with it, so I like bridging edge to edge, and in that I would ask you to experiment. But I'm going to delete those surfaces, and now I have the same number of edges. Now it's important to note that when you're doing bridging, you have to have the same amount of edges that you're bridging from to or multiples of. So if you have 8 edges and you're bridging to 16, it'll work. But you have to follow that caveat. The other nice thing about T-Splines is I want to do the bridging. I'll just pick 3 edges from up here and 3 edges from where I want to bridge to. And then I say loop. T-Splines is intelligent enough to know only the edges that you can bridge. So again, I go to the bridge command, and I'll leave it at 4 segments. Now I've got this really nice bridge. And again, I like to have more edges than I need, because then I can say loop and delete that. And now, again, I'm making a nice clean surface. Now, this has this sort of undesigned hump. So the neat thing you can do is go to your command here, and I have it still invoked with the painting command, and you can go R, and you can just really pull these surfaces right into place. Pull it out a little bit, and then again, I always try to make uniform to relax those surfaces, and now you can see where I've bridged those surfaces together. There's some really nice things going on. Again, you can go back to your box mode, say, and you go to your edge mode. Say you want to make this a little bit, you don't want to undercut there. Now you can just pull those out. And what I tend to do is I'll come over here and go to my front view, and then I'll pick 2 points for my front view. I'll pick that point and that point. Now it's laying there. And then I'll just grab all these surfaces. The other thing I like about T-Splines is it really responds well to the Rhino command, so I say just project to that plane. There you go. And now, if I go to tab, I have a really nice transition that I really like. So you can see that it's just a very flexible program. I have just the right amount of information that I need to make this what I call a lean model. So I'll go back to my front view, and now I'll go ahead and add my symmetry again. But I'm not sure if I've messed up these lines. So again, I'll invoke the edge mode, turn off painting, and then go loop and loop. Now sometimes I get lazy. I'll go to my right C-plane and say project. Yes. And now I know they're on that C-plane. I don't have to go through the set point command. But then I always go A, select all, Z, which is weld any points that are near to each other, and then I go over to my remove creases command. And now I know all my tangencies are set, everything is right for me to go ahead and invoke the symmetry icon on T-Spline. So I'll go to my front view, again go symmetry on, choose that object, add it axially. Pick that and that, and it worked just perfect. But as we all know, goggles aren't flat. Your face is round. And again, what I want to emphasize is you may have a certain curve that you want to fit a person's face. And so I'm winging it here, but I assure you that T-Splines can work to pretty critical dimensions if you'd like. In this case, what I'll do is I'll invoke the faces, and I'll select all the faces on this side. And I will now use Rhino for what it's good at. Again, I will hit the / key, which disables the T-Splines command line, and I'll invoke the bend command in Rhino. And of course it says where's the start of the spline. And first of all I want to be in the top view. And I'll pick the start of the spline and the end, and then I'll just start bending. And now you have a really nice surfaces going on. Again, I always do the command for making uniform. Now you could have a little fun. You can come up here and say, you know, I want this to be like a variable radius. I want this edge to be really tight up here, but when I get down here, I want it to wash out. Well, there's a command called insert point simple, and you just come over and pick where you want it. And now you have a tighter edge there, but as it moves around, and you can say, well, like it's puckering here, so now you can say, well, I want to get rid of these then. And what you'll have is you'll have, oops, sorry. You have a tighter edge, and then it blends out to something smoother. So this is, you can say, oh, geez, I'm getting sort of a bump here. So you go back, go to your tab, your T-Splines tab, take a look at what's going on, and say, oh, okay, I know what's happening. I'll just move this up, and maybe what I'll do is I'll just come over here, go to my right, C-plane, and then pick 2 points, again, like I showed you earlier, and then pick all these points. And you want to make sure, you've got to be really careful. It's worth the time to pick them one at a time, because unless Matt knows a way, it reaches through the surfaces to pick the points behind. And now I have that where I want it. I can say, let's set the point here, go with the scale command, and now I can pull those out. So I know it's on the same plane. Pull that. And now we have a really nice transition there. So now one of the important things that you have to decide with T-Splines is how much you're going to do in T-Splines and how much you're going to detail in Rhino. And I can tell you, you can do some pretty detailed things, and maybe at the end of the webinar, if we have time, I can show you some objects I've recently made, all in T-Splines. But what I want to do is add a strap to this now. So one of the other nice things about T-Splines, again, I'll invoke it, set the faces and the paint command, and start loop that, and maybe grab all these surfaces, and then under the Rhino menu you can come over to the faces and say duplicate. Okay, now what I'll do, hit the F key, which is objects, and sometimes it doesn't work, I don't know why, but I'll hide this. And now I've got this little boot that is basically those surfaces I copied. And I have a little, oh, I missed a surface, but that's okay. With the array surface command, I can just pop one in there. Now, one of the wonderful things that T-Splines has is this thicken command. But what I do when I use it is disable my O-snap because it gets in the way sometimes. So I'll go over to the thicken command, select the object, I'll say crease edges yes. And I'll zoom in and I'll just come out about there. Now, I don't want the inside surfaces, so I'm going to pick the, again, invoke T-Splines, pick the edge and loop it, and again, holding the Shift key, pick this bottom edge and loop it, and then come over to my unweld command. Then if I hit the F command, I pick the insides and I delete them. And then I go ahead and I do the thicken command again. And take it to about there. Now when I bring in my old one, now you see where I've created a loop for the strap around here. And let me hide all my construction lines. Now, then what I do is I'll pick the face command again and paint, and I'll pick these and delete them. And now I have, you'll have to get used to the strangeness. When there are unresolved edges in T-Splines, it looks odd, but that's only because the edges are unresolved. So I'll pick the edges, and I only have to pick these, and I can say loop. No, on this, no, you can't do that, because for some reason you have to pick these edges just correct. Now I have them, and I go over and I just hit the extrude command. I do it twice. And then I pull this out. Now you say, well, that doesn't look quite right. So I go, well, I have it. I'll just clean up everything, make everything right on the same surface, and then pull it down like a strap. Well, all I have to do is hit A key. Oh, first of all, let me get rid of this because it gets in the way. I hope everyone can see this. So if I hit the A key, remember I creased these edges. All I have to do is select all, and I hit Z. I always do that to weld any keys. Then I just say all and untrim, and now I've got this really nice soft strap. And I like to work in the box mode a lot. Actually, I do probably work in box mode more than anything. And then I just put on my my translate manipulator, and then holding the option key down, I just pull out edges. And maybe pull it over here. Option, pull out an edge. E for rotate. W for, okay, and then I can mirror, you could mirror it, but I'm going to go ahead and turn my symmetry on. I'm going to pick, oh, one thing I learned, you got to make a point first. It won't pick, for some reason it won't snap to 0. So I'm going to make a point at the 0 point on my you can't see it now. I made a point right at the 0 point on my work plane. And what I'm going to do is now, instead of mirroring, make this symmetrical and add it via axial. And it's going to ask start a symmetry plane. Well, I can tell it now under my O-snap to look for a point. And it finds the point, and now it's symmetrical. Now if I come over here and I loop that and loop that, and I say weld, bingo, now I have my strap built. And again, there's the model. Now when you get to this level, you start saying, well, I could have done this in Rhino, but the nice thing is you can start saying, well, I wonder what happens if I, let's say we'll get these here and these here, and we'll loop it and delete those. And now what happens if we come out here with a brim for this thing, for a concept? So you pick D and you pick those edges, and now you just pull it out. Now you can start, again, designing. You can take your base model and then go from there to do maybe 4 or 5 concepts, because it's basically virtual clay. What I did then is I took this, and let me hide this. thanks for your patience, everybody. I'm new to this, so I hope I'm making some sense here. And then oh, you know what? Once you've done this and you've got it where you want to, now you can convert it to a Rhino model. And that is done over here where it says convert to Rhino NURBS. Now, one thing I'd like to point out to you, if you look up at your command line, you have the opportunity to hit copy. And when you do that, it'll make a Rhino NURBS translation and also save your T-Splines model, which I usually create a separate layer to store those on. So if I have to come back and, say they changed the battery compartment on a product I'm designing from AA or AAA to AA, I can expand it pretty easily. So in this case, I'm not going to copy it. I'm going to pick that, and now it'll convert it to a Rhino model. A tip I'd like to show you is, like, when you start modeling in Rhino, all these lines can get in the way of seeing the overall form. So the first thing I do is go into my properties palette and I eliminate the isocurves on the surface. That busyness is gone. But when I really want to start working, these lines still get in my visual way, what I do is I create a layer, say here, and I change the color to gray. And then I grab these and I move them over to this layer, and now those lines aren't getting in my way of seeing the form. And then I detail this out and I get this. So let me hide this, and then so here's the Rhino conversion. I don't have the straps with this, but you understood how I made those. And now here's where I detailed all the parts, and then with the wonderful use of the online render Oxpecker, I can put in the lens. The lens I built in Rhino, but again, I pulled all my lines off of the T-Splines model. So with that, I hope this demonstration shows, the wonderful nature of T-Splines and the flexibility, literally, that it gives you to explore your model more fully and more dynamically. And with that, I conclude. Thank you very much. Is anyone there?
Well, thank you, Jim. Can you hear me? Yes. Jim, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Jim, this was definitely, you demystified T-Splines for Rhino. This was a flawless presentation with no barks and no bites. So, and I know there were some passionate attendees that kept asking questions, and Matt did a fabulous job in answering them. So I was going to ask Matt if he wanted to maybe mention a couple of those questions, do a little recap if he thinks is necessary, because I know there was a lot of activity.
Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there were a lot of good questions that were coming in about both what you were doing, Jim, and then just some about the future of T-Splines for Rhino and where that development's at. So maybe just to wrap up some of those, I guess first of all to speak to the future of T-Splines and kind of where the development's been. We've been working on a version 4 for T-Splines, frankly, for longer than we thought we would be. There's been a couple reasons that that's taken a little bit longer than what we thought. One is that, as you're aware, Autodesk acquired T-Splines a few years ago, and so they're in the process of putting T-Splines into some of the other software packages like Inventor and Fusion 360, which I think is a really exciting thing for all of our T-Splines for Rhino users, because it means that your T-Spline skills are becoming more marketable and more valuable as that paradigm gets pushed across different industries with a wider reach. So that's, I guess, one reason why this development is taking a little bit longer. And the second is that we've been able to embark on some larger projects than we were able to when we were a small company. So one thing that you'll see in the T-Splines version 4 beta, and I posted a link for that in the questions, is that we now have improved creasing, which will impact quite a bit of the modeling experience and make it nicer in a number of ways, as well as just other modeling improvements and better integration with Grasshopper. So I thought that was a good question that was asked. I guess just as far as Jim's modeling techniques, I thought those were quite interesting. We have done a number of webinars with users in the past. One thing I liked about Jim's techniques is how well he integrates using Rhino and T-Splines together, and how he leverages Rhino commands seamlessly with his T-Splines commands. And I think that's a really effective way of modeling, to be able to use the sweeps to make the general surfaces, and then use the T-Splines tools to manipulate and form them. I thought that was a very effective demonstration of really what a hybrid modeling environment looks like.
Yes, that was very smooth. I agree. Now, I want to thank you both, guys. I'm going to pass the screen back to me. I'm going to make myself the presenter.
Okay. Thank you very much, Barbara.
Yes, no, you're welcome. Do you guys see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yep.
My screen should be back. All right. I would like to thank everybody for attending this webinar. I also want to remind all of you to visit our Novedge, RhinoVeg website, and join us in future webinars. In 2 weeks, we'll have this webinar with RealFlow 2014, which has been designed to make user life easier, and you want to find out how, you will have to register and join our webinar on July 9th. And I want to remind everyone that today's presentation has been recorded, so you can watch it and share with friends just by going on YouTube and Vimeo on the Novedge channel, and you can find this and many more webinars. Thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed this presentation. It was flawless and it was very professional. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jim. And thank you, all of you, for attending. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.